Hello, everybody. I think it's 2 o'clock now, so we'll get going with our webinar today. So first of all, welcome. I'm very pleased to have so many people interested in this subject. We've had loads of people sign up to spend this half an hour with us. It's a dry topic, so we'll try and make it really clear. This is the second webinar that we've done, and we got some good feedback from the last one. It's been helpful to people to understand the variations and the rules, so hopefully it'll be useful to you attending today. If you do have questions, we've got a Q&A section that you can put your questions into, and also if we don't get around to those questions within the time, then we can follow up via email and we'll give you those contact details at the end. So I think we've got enough people to get going. My name is Lucy Frankel. I am Vegware's Environmental and Communications Director, and I'm delighted to be joined by Craig Robinson today. He is from St Peter's School in York, and he's going to help us bring it to life and break up the dry policy chat. So about roughly halfway through, we'll be chatting to Craig about his real world experiences of moving away from polystyrene, moving towards the compliant products that do meet the requirements for England from the 1st of October. All right, so first off, just to set the scene a little bit, we did a survey. We wanted to understand how people actually felt about the bans coming in October. Did they understand them? Were they ready? Because it has been a bit confusing, to say the least. There's different slight variations around the UK, and so we were seeing what people's responses were, and unsurprisingly 49% of respondents did not understand what the plastics bans meant for their business, and 52% said that their business was not ready for the bans, and a whopping 73% did not understand the differences in what's banned in different parts of the UK. And this figure, I think, is very significant because there's so many businesses that operate all around the UK. So you might have, for example, a distributor that operates all around the UK, or they cross a border, they have clients on both sides of a border. There's slight differences. There might also be for example, there might be a company with 5 different offices around the UK, slightly different things to comply with in each of the different areas. So this is why we wanted to run these webinars and try and set everything out nice and clearly. So what we're going to focus on today is the 4 nations and the big policy variations. So if you look at that shocking pink, they're the highlighter, and you'll see those on the slides coming up, and that's where I've highlighted where there's something that's unique to that particular country. Then we're going to be chatting to Craig in York, then we're going to be looking at the compliant alternatives, and then hopefully we should have time for a few questions at the end. So the Q&A patch, there's a little picture of it there, that's where you can put your questions in. But if we don't get to it today, we'll follow up via email, and afterwards everybody will get a few things via email, including the slides, a recording, and some useful links to the policy information. So first up, let's have a look at the broad timeline. Northern Ireland has already had this kind of requirement in place for the longest. Because of the Northern Ireland protocol, they've been required to be a little more in line with the EU in terms of the rules that they have in place. Whenever Vegware gets legal advice, we're always told again and again that it's to do with we need to comply with the spirit of the law and not only the words of the law. And we're all aware of the sort of political deadlock in Northern Ireland that makes it difficult to get actual rules out, but this requirement is complying with the spirit of the law in Northern Ireland. Scotland, since August last year, has had assorted bans in place. We do, however, still see lots of businesses using non-compliant products, so I think there's more education to be done. Then England, there's been a lot of chat about in media, and of course Wales, both of which have these bans coming in. Well, their unique flavour of ban coming in October that we'll talk about today. Wales has got a two-phase approach, which we'll find out more detail on. So let's start off with England. So from the 1st of October, there's assorted items not going to be allowed anymore at all. So any plates, bowls and trays which contain any amount of plastic. So those, any amount of plastic could be also a lining. Sales of those items are not allowed to consumers. So for example, if you would be selling 50 bowls or trays for jelly and ice cream for your kids' party at home, that is not allowed from the 1st of October. There's been an exemption, however, for businesses using those products at point of sale. So this is really in England, it's different from us everywhere else in the UK. In England, it's just really the sales to consumer of those items. Then, of course, the cutlery is the biggie that we're all familiar with. So no more plastic cutlery from October. And given the legal definitions, that also includes CPLA and PLA cutlery made by Vegware. But of course, we do have alternatives that we'll touch upon later on. Polystyrene, so food and drinks containers and cups made from expanded and extruded foamed polystyrene. That is no longer allowed in England from the 1st of October. And straws, plastic straws, there's already a limitation in England. So straws will be mentioned a few times today, but it's much more a limitation than an outright ban, because some people do still need straws for independent living if they have personal health needs. So there's still an allowance for straws, plastic straws, to be used in some circumstances. Moving on to Scotland, where I speak to you from Edinburgh today, sunny Edinburgh. So it's a similar story. So in Scotland, single-use plastic plates, including laminated paper, are not allowed. And you'll notice that it's only England that has that sort of loophole. In Scotland, it's businesses are not allowed to serve using those at all. It's not just sales for parties at home. Then we've got the same cutlery ban, the similar or the same straw limitation, let's call it. But then here's one, the last one with a difference. So we've got expanded polystyrene food and drinks containers, including cups, but Scotland has added lids. So Scotland is not allowed to use EPS lids, and that's for food or drinks containers. Moving on to Northern Ireland. So here's the requirements from the EU Single-Use Plastics Directive. So since January 2022, it's been the single-use plastic plates, it's been the cutlery, as I mentioned, including CPLA and PLA, and it's also the expanded polystyrene. Now, the little variation in Northern Ireland is to do with marking. So there's marking requirements around the European Union, as I'm sure many on the call will be aware. Northern Ireland does require you to have the turtle graphic. So that needs to go onto cups, onto cold cups and paper cups. There's two slight variations of the graphic, but that is required in Northern Ireland. Moving on, Wales. It was previously just, all we could find previously was just said autumn, but there's now a date being put out. So October, same as in England. This ban is coming in. So we've got the single-use plastic plates, included laminated paper. We've got the cutlery, we've got the drink stirrers, and we've got straws with the exemptions possible. And we've got the same ban on food and drinks containers made from polystyrene, so the foamed material. There's a difference, however, in Wales. They've got a two-phased approach. So the first phase is very similar to what we've seen elsewhere around the EU and around a lot of the UK. However, phase 2 is an interesting one because they're banning all polystyrene lids for cups or takeaway food containers. And so if I can do the sort of the mental, the matching, I think that's making the match with Scotland in that regard. But a big difference is that Wales is also, at some point during 2024, going to ban oxo-degradable plastics. And I'll come on to tell you a little bit more about those shortly. They're also bringing in a ban on plastic single-use carrier bags. So a few things to consider for anybody operating in Wales. Many businesses on the call, I believe, have operations in the EU as well, so you'll be familiar with this. Since July 2021, there's been various different bans in place. So the plastic cutlery plates, stirrers and straws, a ban on oxo-degradable plastics, the same as what Wales is bringing in next year, and of course the ban on expanded polystyrene cups and containers, and the labelling requirements that we've just met when we talked about Northern Ireland. Incidentally, there are a lot of aqueous coated cups around on the marketplace at the moment, and we've had legal advice and looked into the detail, and those do still require the turtle graphic, and so it's not a way of avoiding that marking. So if you're after an overview, the best place to go is to our news blog. So we've had a blog post on our news page for quite a long time, and we update it every time there's something new that comes out. And so this is really the place to go for any of your updates. Do please share this around your businesses. If any of our competitors are on the line today, then you need to update yours and make sure that you've copied us regularly, because we want to make sure that everybody in the sector has the right information, because it has been quite confusing. I have to say, we've done a lot of trawling through various long policy documents to try and figure out what's banned where. So why should we do this? Obviously, there's reasons for these bans coming in, but in terms of the reasons to definitely comply, make sure that your business is not at risk, it's the local authorities who are responsible for enforcement, and that means that a business who is not complying does risk a fine up to £5,000. I'm sure, given the current economic climate, nobody wants to have an extra fine arriving for their business. If anybody sees non-compliance, so people using products that they should not be, then they can report that business to trading standards. So that goes via the local authority or also via the Citizens Advice Bureau. So lots of good reasons to make the switch, and also these slightly more negative reasons to avoid the risks. So I want to share a phrase that I think is quite useful: policy creep. I don't mean a creep as in a horrid person. I mean that we have various policies creeping around the UK. So if, for example, you have one, like for example, Wales, if they've got a different ban that they're bringing in that isn't elsewhere, if you're a UK-wide business, then you still need to respect the rules of Wales, and it means that businesses that operate across different borders within the UK need to make sure that they're compliant with the whole of the UK. So here is the sort of safe list, if you like. So for cutlery, there's a ban somewhere in the UK on all plastic cutlery, CPLA and PLA cutlery. And so what's the safe option allowed UK-wide? Well, everybody's familiar with wooden cutlery, and Vegware is very proud of our paper cutlery as well, which is something Craig has been using and can tell us about his experience of. In terms of plates, bowls and trays, then we have a ban in, I think, all of the UK on expanded polystyrene and laminated paper. And so the safe options, we've got moulded fibre, also known as bagasse, there's paper, there's card, lots of different options. In terms of cups, around the UK, we do have bans on expanded polystyrene, as we've talked about, but also oxo-degradable plastic. And so the safe option is paper or PLA cups. Lids for cups or containers, we've got bans somewhere in the UK on expanded polystyrene and on non-foamed polystyrene lids. That's Wales. Do you know what? I was wrong when I said about 10 minutes ago that the Wales lid thing made them the same as Scotland. That is incorrect. I do apologise. So the Scottish ban is on expanded polystyrene lids, and the Wales ban is actually on non-foamed polystyrene lids. So actually those are the lids that you might see at any high street coffee chain, whether it's black or white or maroon. If you look for the little symbol in the it's the PS polystyrene, those lids are being banned in Wales. Do forgive me. So the safe option for lids, moulded fibre lids, paper lids, CPLA lids and PLA lids, all of which Vegware proudly makes. In terms of bags, the various bits of the UK are banning oxo-degradable plastic and all plastic bags. The safe list includes paper bags and straws. We've got exemptions allowed, but the safe option is paper straws, which Vegware makes very good quality versions of. So next up, very pleased to introduce Craig. So are you with us, Craig? I think you might be muted, but I can see you, so we're half there. Our technical bods in the background hopefully are going to unmute Craig. So whilst we're figuring that out, I'll say that I'm delighted that Craig can join us today. He's from St Peter's School in York, which is a really nice story. And so I'm really hoping Craig can come off mute. Craig, could you unmute yourself? I think we can't help you in the background. I think it's there we go.
How's that?
Perfect. Much better than me trying to tell people about you. I think it's much better if you tell us about you. Sure. So to start off, thank you so much for joining us. And could you start off by telling us a bit about the catering services at St Peter's School in York?
Absolutely, yeah, sure, Lucy. So yeah, my name's Craig Robinson. I'm the General Manager for the Catering and Hospitality at St Peter's School in York. So basically we have 3 schools within our campus, and we feed children from the age of 2 in nursery up to upper 6, which is the age of 18. And we do that across 3 schools. So in an average day, we're doing around about 1,900 meals. That includes breakfast, lunch and tea. We have 150 boarders who live with us full time. And on top of that, we have lots of hospitality. We do a lot of sports teas. We do a lot of packed lunches and cricket matches and things like that. So it's a really, really busy school with a huge catering operation.
Wow, 1,900 meals is a lot of meals there. I'm impressed.
Good, thank you.
So Craig, you've been in the trade for a while, and so polystyrene, it's ubiquitous. It's been used in so many different catering outfits for so long, and you must have in previous roles or previous places, you must have used the materials, the products that are now being phased out. And so could you tell us a little bit about the sort of the change that you experienced and any kind of performance differences? What have you noticed in that switch?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. So we started switching over about 3.5 years ago, which is the time that I joined St Peter's. And we use a lot of different Vegware products. So we use things like sandwich wedge boxes, takeaway cups, and cutlery. We use the bagasse containers for lots of our external hospitality. And the reason that we made the switch early was because I find that the products themselves are much more sturdy. If I take an example of the paper cutlery that we've been using, I'm sure we're all aware that the old plastic cutlery used to snap as soon as you tried to cut something, whereas the paper ones we're using, they're much sturdier, and they look more professional. I find that the products look much better than the old sort of, I always say it's squeaky polystyrene, and they keep the heat of the food so much better as well.
That's great, thank you. And so we're chatting to you today because you're present, but you might be the future. Some businesses listening today who haven't yet changed over. So you're all ready. You're all ready for the for the October changes in the law in England. Can you tell us a bit about your experience of using these compliant products people might not be familiar with, for example, paper cutlery or the moulded fibre boxes that you're using?
So yeah, so like I say, we use them in a variety of different ways. So if we're delivering hospitality or off-site or down to a rugby pitch or a cricket pitch, then that's where we're using the bagasse. We're using sort of 16-ounce paper containers as well. And what from our experience, we've just found that they just look a lot better, and they're comparable in price, which is obviously a big thing for us as well. And so that's why we made the change when we did, and then slowly increased the use of things like the bagasse, different containers that people would be used to, which is like a hinged lid takeaway container, those sort of things.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why we're using those sort of things.
That's great. And Craig, I know that you are composting as well.
We are.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, not us personally. However, what we set up maybe it's about a year ago. We decided that we're using the Vegware. It's compostable, so we wanted to close the loop and go the full journey. So we have our food waste and our compostable disposals get taken away, and that all goes to a composting site near Hull. And within 12 weeks, all our food waste is turned to compost. So we feel like we're closing the loop. It's not going into landfill. It's not getting burnt. It's all like going to compost, which then is used in local farms in the area.
Mm-hmm. That's great. And tell us a bit more about the feedback, because I know that making any change, there might be people who are less keen, but have you had client feedback or staff feedback about the products that you've been using now?
Sure, yes. So all our feedback has been really positive. Our parents think it's great. They think it's great that the school's doing something to help with the use of not single-use plastic. For example, we don't use single-use plastic water bottles. All the kids, we bought them their own St. Peter's water bottle. So it's things like that. The kids take a little bit longer to get on board, but we use our eco committee to try and spread the message with the kids. Teachers are on board. We've done external functions within the City of York itself, where the companies that we've been catering for have been that impressed that they've said, right, well, that's something we need to do because it looks good, it looks the part, it ticks all the boxes. And so for us, it's all been really positive feedback. I've had no negative feedback whatsoever.
That's great. Well, Craig, I'm really pleased that you could join us today. Thank you very much for your time. And yeah, it's nice to hear from a real live operation who's using compliant materials. So thank you for your time.
Absolutely fine, thank you.
Right, so I'm going to carry on chatting about policy stuff and products. So the next section is we're going to look at what people can use. So here are the compliant alternatives. So in terms of cutlery, we've mentioned that all plastic cutlery, CPLA and PLA cutlery from October will not be allowed in England and Wales. We already know it's not allowed elsewhere either. So these are the options. We've got wood and we've got the paper cutlery that Craig is already using and getting good feedback from. Incidentally, since we took that nice photograph, we've also now got some little ice cream sort of mini shovels. They're very cute, and a paper teaspoon as well. In terms of expanded polystyrene cups and containers and lids, these can be replaced by all sorts of different products that Vegware have. So we've got paper cups with the assorted compliant lids. There's Bon Appetit bowls. You can see the one on the left picture there with the nice sort of salad with, I'm not sure what that is, whether it's feta or tofu, not sure, but it looks pretty tasty. And then we have the stack of moulded fibre containers there, and we're very proud of our Nourish range that we'd like everybody to ask for samples of. So in terms of stirrers, of course, there's wooden stirrers, and there's also all manner of wooden stirrers out there on the market. If anybody's interested in the quality of ours, do please ask for samples, because we're very pleased that they sort of splinter less than the average wooden stirrer, and they've been tried for quality. I wanted to touch upon oxo-degradable plastics because this is coming in Wales as a ban next year, part of their second phase. So oxo-degradable plastics are a type of plastic that has had an additive put into the mix, and that additive makes it flake apart. And so they've been very controversial because well, the EU has already banned these materials because the EU's scientists found that they simply created a pollution problem with lots of flakes of plastic. And there's been a recent study from UCL as well that I'd like to have everybody have a look at. So essentially, oxo-degradable plastics are very controversial, and it's not obvious that it's the right solution. We are seeing a lot of pint cups made out of oxo-degradable plastics, and they've got some sort of miracle magic claim that they sort of disappear in nature, or I don't know. It's very confusing, and there's real controversy around it. So I'd advise anybody to read up on those before making that choice. Similarly, you often see bags or sort of cookie bags that might be labelled as degradable, and people confuse that for biodegradable and therefore compostable. Sadly, not the same thing, terribly confusing. But at Vegware, we are very careful about the materials we use, and so we've got all these different alternatives: bags with clear windows, carrier bags, and pint cups that are definitely compostable. Polystyrene lids. So everyone's familiar with the foamed polystyrene, but slightly more surprising is what Wales has added into the mix, which are the sort of non-foamed polystyrene, the sort of trad polystyrene lids for food. So you might see clear soup containers possibly, or hot cup lids. The alternatives, we've got CPLA lids, paper lids, and moulded fibre lids for hot cups to go. I wouldn't be doing my job properly if I wasn't going to tell you a little bit about composting and the various options. We would love anybody who's interested in that to put in an inquiry. There is the web address, vegware.com/keen to compost. There's well over 40 towns and cities around the UK with regular wheelie bin collections, and there's all sorts of other solutions too. So do please put in your queries, and our team, our environmental team, can get back in touch. Lastly, some samples are available to anybody who likes, and do please follow the link in the Q&A, and also you can just reply to the email that we send you as well. And so that brings us to the end of my slides. Colin Sutcliffe has asked, why is there no ban on plastic bottles? Well, Colin, the materials and the products that were in this set of bans broadly came from beach surveys around the EU. So European beaches were looked at for their litter. The most littered items were the basis of those bans. So, there are other products and other product types that have been a cause of concern for other people in other contexts, but those are not the subject of these bans. And I believe, Craig, if you're still with us, there's a question for you.
Okay.
And so the question is, does Craig use Vegware for hot food, including greasy food, and what does he find to be the best solution?
So yes, we do.
Hot and greasy.
Hot and greasy, lovely. Yes, we do. The range that you showed earlier, I can't remember the name of them, the sort of the white with the green tree on, that particular range, we use those. For example, we had a chunky chili con carne with rice for 300 parents at the weekend, and so we served those in this. It's a 32 ounce container that we used. Absolutely perfect. So they've got like a lining on them. I'm not 100% sure exactly what that is.
Do you mean are they quite a tall soup container, Craig? Is that what?
It's the more shallow 32 ounce ones. There's a 16 ounce container.
That's probably the Bon Appetit bowls.
It is the Bon Appetit. Yeah. So we use that range. We served over 300 parents with, like I say, a very wet chili con carne with rice and all the sides, and it just worked to treat. There's no seepage or anything like that. So yes, 100% we do use that.
That's great.
Okay.
Very good. Well, that brings us to the end of the half hour. Thank you very much, firstly to Craig, and then also to my colleagues behind the scenes making all of this work, and to everybody today who set aside half an hour to look into the subject, and we're very pleased you did. We'll follow up via email. Thank you very much.